very warm welcome to everybody watching this evening. I am Samantha Castle, the Senior Manager for Alumni Relations at the University of Pretoria. Tonight, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to another informative and engaging edition of LeadUP online virtual chats. For those of you joining us for the first time tonight, LeadUP Online is a series of virtual panel discussions among our well-renowned UP academic staff and alumni situated in South Africa and across the globe. Each session we look to address topical issues of public interest that are affecting our society. We would love to engage with you over social media, so I encourage you to comment on tonight's session and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Before I hand over to our moderator for the evening, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your ongoing support. So without further ado, let us kick off tonight's discussion.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the LeadUP Alumni Thought Leadership Virtual Chat. A long name to say we are going to chat together tonight. I am Wynand Steyn. I'm the chair of the School of Engineering at UP, and I'm the moderator for the discussion tonight. Prof. Dr Coetzee is the Vice Chancellor of UP since 2019, and as a media studies scholar, he is active in various media fields, but specifically in the field of social media for the purposes of tonight, communicating the stories of our times, our country, our university, our staff, students, and alumni. It's our pleasure to have Prof. Coetzee in our midst this afternoon to welcome our alumni and the viewers to this chat. Prof. Coetzee, very welcome.
Thank you, Prof. Wynand Steyn, for this kind introduction. Good evening, good morning in some places, good afternoon in some places. So welcome to LeadUP, our virtual alumni series. Very popular. We ran 13 last year, very well attended. I just want to say a few words apart from a very, very warm welcome to assure you first that our university is in good hands all across the board. We managed to relatively, I think to just put it modestly, survive and thrive in the pandemic last year, in part because our technological platform for teaching and learning is well matured and well in place. But also, I think we garnered the necessary resilience that is typical of all UP people to be able to see an opportunity that presented itself. And what was this opportunity? My grandmother taught me, every dark cloud has a silver lining. Silver lining for UP was to discern the future at the darkest moment of humanity's nightmare, if you like. And for us, we recognize that the following is true. We live in a disrupted world. These disruptions will not necessarily stop now, and they are not just the pandemic, they are not just the coronavirus. They are economic, they are technological, they are social, and they are political. But we can construct a bright future out of that. So we reimagine the university strategy as a future-oriented university and as a future-focused university that does at least two things or three things. One, high-quality education with the best of infrastructure. Two, co-creating knowledge that transforms life. Three, social engagement and impact in changing the world as we know. So let's get into the debate now. I could go on the whole night because UP is an exciting place, just like its alumni.
Thank you very much, Prof. Coetzee. We really appreciate that, and it's a good way to start to indicate where are we currently. Ladies and gentlemen, the tagline for tonight is 4IR, bracing for and thriving in the midst of disruption and innovation. And through the evening, through the hour, we plan to chat about general disruptions, evolutionary trends, implications of such trends on the general population, some of the effects of 4IR and so on in South Africa, Southern Africa, Africa, and very importantly for us as a university, how a traditional university can play a leading role during these uncertain developments, disruptions, innovations. Of course, the event is brought to you by the University of Pretoria, and the panelists who join me are all UP alumni. And we are really proud about that. And it's good to get them talking after they've been away from the campus for a number of years, some of them, and get their viewpoint, get their input about what we talked about tonight. So let me present the panel. Firstly, we've got Dr. Bridget Ssamula. She is the Senior Director of Major Pursuits at AECOM, and she's sitting in Los Angeles. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you very much, Professor Steyn. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I must say a title like Major Pursuits just sounds like a very cool thing to be able to do. I think that means you can do whatever you want and people will be happy about that. I love the title.
That's a UP alumni.
That's for sure. Then our next alumni panel member is Mr. Justin Coetzee. Justin is the founder and the CEO of GoMetro in Cape Town. And I think it would be a miss if I do not mention at this stage, yes, it's a UP event and everything, but to our UCT comrades, colleagues, and everybody down there, guys, we think about you. We've got a person in Cape Town tonight. Welcome to Justin, but our thoughts and prayers are really going over to you guys in UCT also. Welcome, Justin.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to be here.
We appreciate it. And then our last panel member is Mr. Nicol Verheem. Nicol is the founder and CEO of Teradek. He's also sitting in Los Angeles. And as you will gather through the night, we are actually showing you the websites of the companies, because within an hour it's a bit short to talk about all the cool stuff that they are doing. But I think the important thing is Nicol is sitting there where Hollywood is operating. Welcome, Nicol.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so the discussion tonight can be very dry for some people. We can say we are talking about disruption and innovation as discussed by mostly engineers. Or we can actually say how to entertain people in 2021 through disrupting stuff. Because if you look at the panel, the people around here, we've got one person that's a specialist in media studies. We've got one person who cut the cables of movie cameras. We've got another one that looks at cool new buildings and infrastructure. That's where you go and have a look at the movies. We've got another one that looks at the transportation to the movie. That's when social distancing and stuff gets less of a problem, and how do you disrupt that? And then you've got a moderator who sometimes listens to roads and sometimes listens to tomatoes. So there's some food for the movie. So I think it's a nice balanced panel with totally different backgrounds, although all of them traveled through Pretoria at some stage. So to start our discussion, I would like to start with this. If you really think about it, disruptions and evolutions have been with us since the dawn of time. At some stage, there was some person that realized how to control fire. And there was another person that determined the beneficial use of the wheel. So I don't think we should think so much about ourselves as, wow, in this century we disrupt stuff. People have disrupted stuff for quite a while. But I think the question for us is, in terms of this, are we disrupting life or are we innovating? And I would like to start off with Nicol. Your view on, are you a disruptor or are you an innovator?
I used to be a disruptor, but now I'm an innovator. And the difference is only maybe taking a larger view, maybe being more socially responsible, and really trying to make sure that whatever you change leaves the world a better place. So I think disruption, like you say, is a built-in part of Mother Nature. You can call it, it's a natural effect of entropy. But the changes that we bring upon the world by ourselves, that can be innovative or it can be disruptive, and that's for us to decide.
Justin, I think if you can take from there, because we've got now sort of the more digital technology side, but I think in terms of what you have done to transportation, initially in Cape Town and bigger, disruption or evolution?
Yeah, so I think the privilege we have is where we are now, is we're at the intersection of hard science and hard engineering. But that hard engineering has cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, powers that you can only imagine, with almost unlimited capital being directed at bright young minds who want to go out and do things. And so we've never before had the kind of, I think we've been disrupted as technologists and engineers by being able to have an idea, being able to pursue it, being able to have it built in India, tested in South Africa, shipped to the States, and tested again back in India, all within a short space of time. But with that comes enormous scale and unintended consequences. And I think what haven't been prepared for, or we've seen, is a social media that shares photos elected an orange president of the United States a few years ago. A network of self-driving cars. If they get imported from one country to another, if those two countries have a dispute, would they switch off the traffic lights or switch off the artificial intelligence that powers the motor vehicles that were imported? We're seeing chip wars and trading blocks and technology really starting to being used as a geopolitical weapon in our time. And so the question, I think, are we being disrupted by the scale of the waves that we've created through incremental innovations that are increasing in the frequency? There used to be an adoption curve of 30 years, an adoption curve of 20 years, an adoption curve of 10 years. Yesterday, I read about a company that started in 2019, sold for $850 million. So what used to take 30 years to build, you can do in 18 months. And so are we on top of a beast, a whale, a giant, a monster, or are we just riding the biggest wave of our life? And I'm not quite convinced we're fully in control of this ride.
Bridget, if I can ask you, because you've got the benefit between us that you've been in South Africa, you've done a stint of work in East Africa, now you are sitting in Los Angeles in the United States, different cultures, different areas, different technologies. What do you think about disruption evolution in this more global scale?
Strangely, I've found that the African market is more amenable to the technology, mostly because it is solving a couple of problems quite quickly, right? So there are a lot of health problems, testing of water solutions, how healthy the water is, the use, let's say, of mobile money. That banking industry has really gone like a mile a minute in the African environment, whereas the more established environments are a little bit cautious about what the needs are and what the gaps are. That being said, the ability, I think, of institutions to be able to train, you know how we have the largest number of entrepreneurs in the world in the African region, I think to be able to train them to be creative enough so that we actually use technology in a way that's responsible, like what Nicol said, to be able to solve problems. That is the space, I think, for the engineer going forward within the environment. And the attraction of it is that is where then the space, the market, and the appetite for a lot of those businesses happens. But the global interest of being able to fund and solve those problems at a very micro scale, at a country level. So the problems that work in Kenya and the problems that work in Uganda and the problems that work in Nigeria will be very different, using very different technologies and tools. So you almost have to have a cultural element as to how you innovate and disrupt. But the attractiveness, I think, is there for the entrepreneur and the innovator in the African setting.
Thanks for that. And I think a very important part that you brought to it, that often as engineers, we focus so much on the technology and the disruption, and this is such a cool tool that I developed and everything. But the cultural part actually still play a major role. And I must mention that this is it's a pet pain of myself for the last week. The fact that one of our local news stations took the weather presenters off the system, and they will only now show the weather with the information. And I must say, I always thought I was an engineer and I love data and stuff. But when that weather person was gone with the interpretation, the human side of things, of saying, guys, this is why it's dry in the Karoo this time of the year. This is why the wind is blowing in Cape Town today. You suddenly realize that the disruption on the technology, that's important and so on, but if you forget humanity, you've got a major problem. Nicol, in the business where you sit and where you disrupt the cables to cameras so you almost don't see people on the one hand, what do you think is the importance of this human side of things?
I mean, ultimately, we don't build any innovative technology for the benefit of the technology, right? The technology, we build technology generally to remove inefficiencies. That's really what it always boils down to. So to get that higher efficiency, we automate something, or we accelerate something, or we put a computer in the cloud, or we remove a cable. That made movie making more efficient. It did remove a job, but it also created many other jobs. So that is more efficient. Now, it's when you achieve this efficiency at a very large scale, and you don't anticipate all the possible impacts, all the uses, then you inadvertently let in the bad actors. You can't expect to build a massive communication system and not have the crazies show up. They will show up, right? So you always so I think this is the interesting thing that is going to happen to engineering over the next decade or two. We end up taking a much larger responsibility than just technology, because legislation cannot keep up with the changes that technology is bringing to the world. So it's up to us to bake in the protections that's necessary to make sure that that innovation is applied for good and leaves a good result.
If I can take that through to you, Justin, if I very much simplified what you disrupted is to make public transport more visible, more usable and so on, how much of this cultural differences do you see playing a role in the different countries and even areas? I must say even Cape Town, Pretoria is not the same places, even though we are in the same country. How much of that do you need to incorporate when you roll out GoMetro in a different location?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the problems on the ground will always be the ones that you need to respond to. So, for instance, we're currently working in India on a major city project with 11,000 buses and 8 government entities and 3 funders, and you just have to keep a map about who's who when you go to a meeting to know what's going on. Versus trying to help a minibus taxi association in Rustenburg with 50 vehicles try and rationalize their fleet and manage their operations. We had the same issue recently on a project where the European, the guys from London were like, well, a journey planning app is an important thing to solve. And, London's never been the same since City Mapper got around and you could find your way around. And the reality is the project site has essentially one bus company with 40 buses. So the problem isn't which bus do I pick, because there's only 40 or 80 to pick from, and your route and your line. The problem is if that bus is broken, you need to know that it's broken. If it's not coming today, you need to know it's not coming today. You need to make arrangements. So the technology will always be way ahead of what we can consume and what society wants to see. And the real levers where we can be positive in disrupting is using technology to drive institutional, social, and kind of structure changes. So changing the power dynamics. Now that everyone can videotape anything on their phones, now suddenly all of the issues around race relations in the US and the way that policing is done, versus with different population groups, something that's always been there is now at the surface, at boiling point. Now that you've been able to connect different groups and different people together, yes, you do get the capital riots and you do get, populism rising, but you'll always get that boiling point. There was populism with the Industrial Revolution. There was populism in a response to the industrialization of a lot of labor. There was populist responses in the 1920s with the mechanization of mines in South Africa. So we're seeing this populism not as something that will always be with us, but it is a response to displacement, a loss of income, a loss of jobs, a loss of status, a change in the world order. And so I think what we have to acknowledge and try and get through is what we would call the Great Reset, or the Big Reset, as some have called it. I don't call it that. I call it the Great Acceleration. And it's the big acceleration that things that were going to take 5 years to happen have happened in 10 months, 12 months, 18 months. We're all online. We're all on calls. We're all on video calls. You know, colleagues in their 60s who I don't think knew how to use their smartphone other than to call their daughters are now on Microsoft Teams and are online and are engaging. And so this acceleration is upon us. And the systems we build and the ethics that we bake into, you know, one of the most valuable courses, I guess, from UP days was, you know, fourth year ethics. The classes that I did attend and didn't skip to go play pool at Steers, those that I remember, you know, those lessons you learn in ethics actually guard you when you enter the profession. And what other fields or other, you know, I think, you know, others may take a chance, may take a gap. I think engineering ethics remains a cornerstone of being able to navigate the dilemmas that lie ahead.
That actually takes me to a very important question for us at the university as a next question. All three of you are employing talented people in your organizations continuously. And Bridget, if I can start with you, we've been not only our student, but my colleague also for a number of years. What do you see as the 2 or 3 major things that we as a traditional university that's got a specific mandate to train and teach engineers? There are certain basic things that you still require from us. What do you see as the major things that we should ensure that a UP graduate walks out of the door, like this week when we've got all the graduations and everybody get their certificates and they are feeling so proud? What's the 2 skills that you think we should really focus on?
Okay, thank you. Right now, it's such an unenviable task being one who compiles the course, because the basics remain. So we need to be able to know your statics and mechanics. I know there are many who hate that part, but at the end of it is that now they need to be able to design in Civil 3D and the Bentleys and so on and so forth. But I do think in all of that, one of the fundamentals that we have as a core of what we lecture in engineering is to teach people to solve problems. I think one of the things that we need to do differently, so one, they need to be able to understand that they are problem solvers. That battle of going through wanting the same problem, I think there needs to be a faster track towards making the students understand that the problems are going to be different. So if we had the same problem, we would all still be using the same phone that Alexander Graham Bell, you know, designed way back when.
So
that has accelerated.
There, so I can tell my students that Dr. Bridget Ssamula said you should not study old exam papers. You should understand new problems, because that's what life is all about.
Exactly. Because continue. Even we in consulting, as much as consulting, you would like to be able to solve the same problem. Our clients and what we are doing is demanding more innovation. Because it's efficient, it's helpful, the problems are unique. So I think teaching them to be able to solve a new problem or finding creative ways of solving the problem and using technology might need to come a little bit earlier in their 2nd and 3rd year. I think that's important. But also just to be able to then get them to specialize a little bit early. I think in understanding where I want to be able to do, because the jobs are changing. And right now, there are many places where we don't have draftsmen anymore, because you actually are all designing in a digital world where you start off the work and the work is designed with the India team, and then the Spain team takes over, and then the team in Philadelphia finalizes. That's the world that we live in today. So being able to understand that the core of engineering and the designs and problem solving has not changed. However, the problems need to be unique. The solutions require technology, and our ability to design and create and innovate needs to be brought in a little bit earlier, I think, because then the students are then able to do it. And I think the ethics doesn't need to wait anymore until the 4th year, because they're younger, they know more, they're understanding and receiving a lot more information. So the mindfulness with which they come up with solutions, how they impact communities. So that community work that they do, communications and ethics, I think needs to come in a little bit earlier, such that by the time they've decided where they want to end up and what they're going to innovate, they know the human aspect of the impact of what they're doing.
Thanks for that part. Nicol, when we had a discussion 4 weeks ago, introducing all of us to each other, you had some very interesting aspects that you would like us to make sure that our graduates see as part of the package that they walk out of. Yeah.
So I think Bridget mentioned problem solving hasn't changed, and I agree with that. You have to learn the basic mechanism of problem solving. What has changed is the technology, the tools, the skills, if I can call it that. So 100 years ago, you were taught skills that would last decades. What Justin said is totally true. Everything is accelerating, but I would argue that it's always been accelerating, and this is not the great acceleration. It's just we're going into an acceleration, but the acceleration will accelerate even further. And it will continue to accelerate. It's never going to stop. It's just going to go faster and faster.
Just
so
to
it doesn't help.
On that also, I had an economics textbook in our third year, engineering economics, and there was quotes at the start of each chapter. And the one quote in the one chapter came from Alice in Wonderland, where she said, in this world, you have to run as fast as you can just to stand still. And at that stage, being a third-year engineering student, I thought, why do you put a quote like this in an engineering textbook? And I think all of us have since realized, exactly as you say, it's because the acceleration is accelerating.
So I read yesterday, partial differential equations, or what I call pretty difficult equations, are now being solved by computers orders and orders of magnitudes faster than 1 year ago. So if we teach students how to solve partial differential equations, it's going to be obsolete before the year is out. What we need to teach people is how to learn. We have to learn how to learn, because the world will keep on changing, and we have to keep on adjusting and adapting to that. So the actual most important skill is the ability to learn and adapt to those changes.
So what we call at UP now, our philosophy around teaching is that we have to make people lifelong learners. And it's exactly as you said, they have to learn, unlearn, and relearn because things are changing all of the time. So I was interested in also what Bridget said about some of the human elements that come with that, where you mentioned different sites where things happen. So is in collaboration now a key skill that we must teach? That, by nature, things are now collaborative. You might do one part, but you are part of a big team. And also there you have to understand cultural diversity and other diversities.
I think that's a very important viewpoint, and I think it's so important for our students to appreciate that part. Justin, you had a last very interesting viewpoint about the skill that you learned at university that you use every day and every night still, and that we should be able to read more and quicker and so on. Please share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does complement everyone else's viewpoints around what skills are required. The volume of different materials that I need to read and make a decision on really quickly on incomplete information and be very comfortable that I'm making a good decision, having read as much as possible, but needing to make one. It varies. At the moment, I'm diving into hydrogen. I'm busy researching electricity prices in Ethiopia. I'm busy looking at alternatives to Google Maps' APIs for an open mapping stack. And that was only this morning's reading list. And so the ability to consume enormous amounts of information, become a quasi-expert, within 30 minutes, make a decision, and then move on and be comfortable that you made hopefully a good decision on incomplete information, but that a decision was made is something that I see becoming more and more important. And so identifying what's important, identifying the key drivers of any decision, identifying sensitivities and the quality of decision making, whilst consuming as much information as possible before you make it is going to be again, yeah, I like that. It's the start of the great acceleration. We're at the bottom of the curve. It's only going to get steeper.
I think that's a frightening part about a lot of this, where as we get to the second part of this discussion, that people often feel, but this is disruptive, we want to get back to normal. And that we don't realize, but listen, when the first person beneficiated the use of the wheel, there was probably also somebody that thought, wow, this thing is starting to roll very quickly now. Let's hope that one breaks down, that we can just walk again. And it's through all of these cycles, every time there's something that we think, wow, life is now getting very fast. And in a year or 3 or 5 years' time, we realize, no, but I got used to that. Now I need to do more to keep up. So I think if we now go to what we call sort of the second part, firstly, if I can ask you guys, we can just sort of look at, I'm just trying to get to, there we are. Okay, yeah. What's the stuff that you really think that if you could have your wish, Wednesday night, 21 April, you go to sleep. Thursday morning, 22 April, you wake up. Bridget, what's the one thing that you would have hoped that would have been disrupted by tomorrow morning to change your life?
There's quite a lot that happens socially, so I don't know what technology can do. I do think, though, one of the things that we need, it's that decision-making tool that Justin was talking about. I think if we could, you know how you go to Google and you can ask, Google has become everybody's go-to, it's their modern day encyclopedia. I think our ability to be able to make decisions and understand the impact of the decisions that we're going to be making, almost like mind map. I think for me that would be the one thing, because like Justin said, if we count how many decisions we make in a day that impact people, the jobs, the environments, in the engineering environment, who are you designing for, who you're leaving behind, who's going to get more jobs than the other. I think it is that if we could be able to get that level of tool to be accessible to individuals, I think that would really help along the way. I think that would change the way we do things. Yeah.
Perfect. Nicol, your overnight disruptor of choice?
Neural implants that connects us to computers. And the reason for that is not that I want to consume more information. We're actually really good at taking information in, but we're very limited at getting information out. So we're output bound. If you look at the speed at which I can talk or type compared to the speed at which I can ingest visual information through my eyes, it's a complete mismatch. So I think communication amongst each other and the transfer of information and knowledge will really benefit from my ability to just tap right into your brain and tell you, every thought that I have or every vision that I see. That would really change humanity. Of course,
that sounds like
Elon Musk is working. It will happen, but it will take a while.
That sounds like the tool that I really wished I had towards sort of close to the end of my PhD, when I went through the analyses and everything, and you guys will know that feeling with developments and stuff. You've got everything in your head, and you realize you have to now type this into a document, and you almost think, if I can just plug the printer in here somewhere and say, just print what is in my head. It's there. I just want to get it out. Justin, your overnight disruptor of choice.
I would love us to accelerate and wake up tomorrow and half of all decision makers are women, and most decision makers are engineers, technologists, accountants, someone who has to actually write an exam of some sort or have expertise in some sort, other than giving nice speeches and kissing babies, to become the mayor or the governor or the premier, or donate to a particular party enough money to get onto their list so that you can get into parliament. I think I would love for us to acknowledge diversity and quality of decision-making and skill at key decision places. Then we wouldn't have the irrational and obviously corrupt and bad decision-making that seems unstoppable. If we want to talk about what feels unstoppable, sometimes bad governance feels unstoppable. So let's get more women, and let's get more engineers and accountants and qualified implementers into decision-making positions.
What I really like about that part is, again, here we sit, 4 engineers, engineering training, technical nerds, mostly now and then. That's what people sometimes think about as our families sometimes. And they say, guys, just get a life. And we've got an engineer that actually says, forget about all the digital stuff and so on. Look at the humanity. Look at the diversity. Look at how we just sort of make better decisions, because that's important. And it's sad to think about it, that will be a disruption in our way of doing. It should not have been a disruption. It should have been, wow, it makes logic sense that trained people take decisions. But thanks for that one. Now I want to ask it from a bit of a different viewpoint. If I go the other way around, start with you, Justin. What do you see in your current job, your current environment or job, in 5 years' time that will be gone, that you don't need that anymore? It's not part of your job. What do you think in terms of the way we develop?
Yeah, so in our job, so we work with software, we do software development, we do a lot of analysis and analytics. I think Excel, hopefully in 5 years' time, will be gone. And I do think that, yeah, the tooling with which we are implementing, what we define as, you could say, basic computer literacy, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, email, internet browser, those are the 5 things you must be able to do to participate in today's digital economy. I think those 5 things are going to be quaint toys for the oldies, and much more advanced tool set for anyone who's serious about solving any problem.
That's quite an interesting viewpoint. Nicol, on your side?
It's maybe a little bit more than 5 years, but I believe and I fear that the camera will actually be obsolete. Not in the sense of the iPhone, but in the sense of the camera as a hobbyist or an artist would use. And this is mostly because the camera has become so small and so prevalent in the phone, but also because rendering artificial content rather than shooting real content is becoming cheaper and cheaper and easier to use. So right now, most of the content that we see, most of the stories visual storytelling that we do is filmed, and it's supplemented by computer graphics. But that ratio will switch, and soon it will be mostly computer graphics with some filming in it. And I'm not looking forward to that. I think we will lose something that has greatly benefited mankind over the last many decades.
I hope, and I hear what you say, and I think you've got a major big point there, but I almost hope it's like something like the music industry, where 10, 20 years ago we thought, okay, it will just be CDs, and then it will just be digital music, and suddenly there's this whole move back of vinyl, because you've got people that started to realize, whoa, slow with that. Yes, we can do it like this, and the fact that we can do it like this does not mean we have to do it like this. I think the same with the book industry. 10 years ago, when digital books and e-books and stuff really started to gain momentum, there was all these predictions that in 5 and 10 years' time we will not have any printed books anymore. We will only have tablets and Kindles and so on, and that will be where we read from. And if you listen to industry, they say, yeah, well, it grew, but there's still this need for a lot of people to physically pick up a real book and read from paper. And I
Prof. Steyn, if I can respond to that, if I can,
yeah.
You touched one of my passion points. So the reason why CDs took over from vinyl was because it was a lot more convenient, right? It's a lot easier to transport. It's easier to manufacture the CDs. It's cheaper. But this is an example of where engineers really messed up and did humanity a disservice, because we didn't understand hearing well when the CD Red Book format was created. And so the CD never contained as much information as what the vinyl did. And only now do we realize that the high definition music, sounds better than what CDs sound like. But there's now there's decades of music that was recorded in a format that didn't capture all the nuance, all the sound. And now there's generations of people that is used to the way that CDs or MP3s sound, rather than that's what a real violin or trumpet or piano sounds like. So even though we had the best intent, we came up short because we didn't really understand the richness of hearing. We created a tool that then took over the world and very nearly absolutely killed vinyl, right? It's very close. And even, I could even say analog music, whatever real string or brass instruments, you know, even all of that was endangered by digital music. So this is an example where engineering actually came up short. If they defined a better standard, we would have retained a richness that got lost and might be lost forever.
And I think that links to another favorite topic at UP these days that we call the transdisciplinary part of our job. Because what you're actually saying is the engineers should do their job, but they should please talk to the musicians while they do a development like that. They should please talk to the humanities people. They should please talk to the audiologists and say, guys, just I've got this cool technology and stuff, but just tell me, how does a person actually react to this? How do they experience it? Because if we miss that...
Yeah, they should talk to people who listen to the music. Because ultimately, that's where the market is. Yeah.
I think that what Prof says is a major important part. It's like picking up a second-hand book and you page through it. And yes, it's dusty and it's old, but you actually see somebody else's name in front. And you start to realize, but this book has got a history. It's not just an electronic file and you download it and it's there. It links you to a humanity that I think through the discussion so far from all of you actually became quite an important part, that disruptions, evolutions and stuff is not just hard engineering and science and a better way of doing it. You need to make sure that that human side is there. Bridget, if we get to you then with that, what of your job do you think or wish is non-existent in 5 years' time? And we've saved the music and the books now.
I have two, and it's going to join the slide ruler and the vernier calipers. It's the scientific calculator. I think it's, I don't remember if any of you looked at your scientific calculator. If you turn your phone around, you notice it stops being a normal calculator and becomes a scientific calculator. I don't think you've used it in a while. The other one is a pet peeve of mine, software licenses. I truly believe the ones who charge the most will become obsolete, and the ones who bring up something that is free and it's usable will survive. So, but I believe there's a certain element of knowledge not being chargeable at some point, especially like Nicol and Justin have said, where the disruption and the acceleration is so high. So yeah, so software licenses, those ones, yeah.
So you believe in open source?
I do, I really do. Look at how Adobe has worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree with the software. I must say, on the slide rules and the calculator, I'll take a while. I have never used a slide rule in class. I was a bit young for that. But the technology, I got a mechanical calculator for, I think, my birthday this year, from my son, who is also a nerd and an engineer. The other son, who is an economist, did not understand this. And the beauty of that, of you press buttons and there's gears and you do the maths. But I totally appreciate we cannot use that in the office. It will take us a while to get the job done. But I think for sure the whole software issue and what do you use, and that you are not married to a package for the next 25 years because you paid it and it is in that format. Very, very appropriate example. I don't think all the software guys may love us for this, but that's where the world are going.
That's real disruption now.
That will be disrupting life for sure. Now I
think we shall start subscribing like you do for DSTV, right?
Yeah.
So it's a monthly subscription, whether you need it or not. And that's what Zoom is doing, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Changes the technology in total. And I think once the business models start to change, that's when society also starts to change, because we realize, but wow, it's possible to do it like this. Now I would like to ask you sort of a last question around the disruptions and stuff, and this links very, very directly to a YouTube video that I saw on Teradek's website, where they sort of look at standing on the shoulders of giants and how they got to where they are. And I think it's an old thing that we say in terms of what we do. If we are honest, we are always standing on somebody else's shoulders in our developments, in our disruptions, in our innovations. So I want to ask you the question like this, and Justin, I'll start with you. Who do you want to stand on your shoulders in 25 years' time?
Yeah, so I sit at the intersection of engineering, transport planning and public transport systems, technology, so we have software, and disruptive business models, financing, fundraising, and economics. So there's three disciplines that are intersecting. So we've taken a view at GoMetro to really focus on Pan-African recruitment and building a talent base in and across Africa. So we have staff across Africa. We have projects now in Rwanda, in Nigeria, in Botswana, Malawi. And so in 25 years' time, I'd like African engineers to be able to have an idea, not have to move to Silicon Valley to get $1 million, or find an American or European co-founder who can be the person who goes and gets the check, but can raise capital on their own rights and in their own ways, can build and deliver products and services for the next billion consumers that is awaiting for products that are fit for their needs in Africa, and can then take that enterprise and list it on an African stock exchange, or find an exit to then become an angel investor and a participant in a thriving African economy. So in 25 years' time, I'd love for those that work at GoMetro, and I will say we are hiring, so please do reach out to me on LinkedIn if you see this. But I would say that I would love for alumni of our business to be able to be building their own businesses and being able to find ways to employ more and economic outcomes that benefit Africans.
Quite cool. Quite interesting. Bridget, if I ask you the question, and keep in mind now the difference is Justin started this business. It's a relatively small business on a world scale probably still, but in Africa it's a really growing good business. You are now part of AECOM, which is a major international business. So it's a different mindset, it's a different visibility. Who would you like to stand on your shoulders in 25 years' time?
Look, mine's really simple, and the teacher in me comes out. I think I knew very earlier on what I wanted to be. I wanted to build and I wanted to create, and I destroyed a lot of things in my parents' home in the process. So for me, any young girl who can dream and wants to build, and I want to exclude the boys can come along, but anyone who has the ability to dream and travel and see the world. One of the things that I've seen with my education, and tax being one of the things that helped me get there, is that once you have a certain amount of education, your ability to change the world through engineering destroys or cuts across country boundaries. And so for me, anybody who can dream, the world's their oyster. What you want to do, your ability to be able to change the world in certain things. So for me, it's dreamers. Anyone who's a dreamer and wants to innovate and create. And that's what I try to do when I'm teaching. That's what I do in business development as well. But even the people that I mentor, I think that's what, because we are dreamers as engineers, we dream things and we make them happen while solving people's problems. So yeah, anybody who's a dreamer can come along.
I think we missed an opportunity. We should have got you for one of the graduation ceremonies this week, because I think that's a real apt message to get through to the graduandi, our new alumni that got their graduations this week, last week, next week, is that ability to dream. And yes, you have to get down to the ground in the end and actually do the job at some stage, but dreaming far enough and understanding that you are allowed to dream. It's not a case of, listen, no, sorry, I'm in this little town, I grow up over here, I cannot dream because I do not own SpaceX, so I cannot dream. Very, very interesting perspective and very apt perspective from you. Nicol, from your side, I leave you for the last one for this because I actually saw the video and got the idea from your website.
So I think we've all said many things that we want to do that will positively impact society. But I kind of have to recognize the limitations of what I'm capable of, what we're capable of. We're not going to fix the political landscape. We're probably not going to fix, world health issues. But what we can do is we can contribute and we can positively impact society. And the avenue that I found that can do that is by enabling storytelling. If we can turn everybody into a storyteller, we will understand each other a lot better. So if we make the barrier of entry into getting your story told lower so that more people just feel, I have a story to share, then we'll see world so different than if there's just 100 people that decide what the stories are on TV or in the movie screens, right? So if we lower the barrier and everybody get to tell their story, then mankind's understanding of each other will just change.
If I can link that very, very good answer to first-year engineering education, I had a question from one of our new first-year students a week or 3 ago. Bridget and Justin will know that's our humanities module that the humanities faculty teaches to engineers. And it is about storytelling, reading different types of texts. And I think that what you said balances what we are trying to introduce the engineering students to over there, that you realize it's not only the calculations, the physics, the chemistry, very interesting, it's a communication. I think Prof. Coupe will support us totally in there from a media, from a communication viewpoint. Yeah, if you cannot tell your story, how will people know about it? That's very apt. If I go to one or two of our online questions, and I'll pose this one and you guys can indicate who wants to answer this one. The question is, when is the right time to teach technology and innovation in schools, and how do we get this ball rolling in order to realize the benefit in a broader scale, including the underdeveloped villages? I think that links it very specifically to Africa, but the rest of the world has also got a lot of these underdeveloped villages. Who wants to volunteer in answering that difficult question? Bridget, yes.
The teacher in me is coming
I
out.
thought so.
So in the curriculum and in every curriculum, we do spend quite a bit of time doing industrial training, right? So it's either industrial training or you're assigned and you do a studentship with an entity within engineering. I truly believe they should start from first year. Whatever project, there should be a component that is not, it doesn't necessarily have to be technology, but it has to be an innovative thing, because in the beginning, innovation and thinking about problems and creative ways of solving problems doesn't come naturally. So it's almost a part of your brain that needs to be trained. So I believe literally from first year, whatever project you do, there has to be an aspect, what's innovative? Well, how have you used technology? So you weave it in such that by the end they get to their fourth year, that will be part and parcel of what they can be able to produce, what they can be able to patent, what they can be able to develop that comes out of their final year projects and things like that. So throughout the year, I think throughout the years that they're studying engineering.
So you can never start too early.
If I can, maybe.
Yes, please.
I think it's even the question about what's innovation. Innovation is trying to improve something, trying to change something, or trying to do something different. So it's actually just having the courage to try, even if you fail. And if you fail, well, you're just going to try it a different way because what you learned is how it won't work. And so I think we have that as kids. We play, we experiment, we are happy to be made, like to be the fool. I think in the famous kind of marshmallow and spaghetti stick experiment, first graders outperform CEOs because they just try every combination to try and build the tower, whereas the CEOs want to get it completely right the first time. And so I think if we speak about like learning and unlearning, the biggest thing for me to unlearn in my journey as an innovator has been to not worry about failing and seeing failure for what it is. It's just one more step on the path to success. And you've just gotten over a hurdle by learning what not to do. And so, I think if we can just maintain that joy of failing forward, of learning from what doesn't work and not treating failure as a personal indictment of capability, capacity, and skill called a test or an exam, but rather a learning experience, I think we can really unleash energy and potential, because there's more than enough problems in Africa. We just look around, there's problems everywhere, but there are as many solutions as there are challenges, as long as we just keep trying.
Perfect. Nicol, I'll ask
yes. It's called fault-tolerant management. And that's really important. We should encourage it. We should encourage it as parents, as teachers, as CEOs. We should allow people, the best way to learn faster is to make more mistakes. You have to be willing to make those mistakes. The analogy that I like to use, none of us learned how to walk without falling over first. So we all start learning by failing, and then we just improve on that. And somehow along the line, we lose that as a society or as a culture, but we mustn't. It's important that we accept failure as a step, as a learning process.
I will not give that answer to my students when I give them their results for their tests, because then they will tell me, this esteemed panel told us tonight that you should fail a few times before you pass. But I totally understand that's not the idea of the answer. 30 seconds answer for each of you. This is the quick fire one. How do we mitigate the dilution of the quality of knowledge when it becomes free? Bridget, start with you. 30 seconds.
Knowledge is not diluted when it's free. All you're supposed to do is focus on what you're interested in and what you want to do, and expand that knowledge in the area that you know. Becoming a jack of all trades and a master of none is where knowledge becomes diluted, because you have little knowledge but think you know quite more than you need to. So it's about focus, understanding what your area is, what you want to learn, and focus on that, and that's where you derive your knowledge. Thanks.
Perfect. Justin, 30 seconds.
I think it's the wrong question. Knowledge is just something on a page. It's just a thing. You've got to be world-class in your execution, world-class in your implementation. You have to learn what world-class means, apply whatever knowledge you have, and apply yourself. So the world is moving faster, it's getting better, and you just have to do your very best to be excellent. So knowledge is static. It's a thing in a library, except in Cape Town we no longer have those anymore. There's things called libraries. But apply yourself, implement implement everything, and really focus on the quality of your execution, and you will learn faster and learn quicker.
Perfect. Nicol, last 30 seconds.
I agree. The question is maybe not the right question. I don't think knowledge gets diluted. I think the sooner, the quicker, the cheaper we share the knowledge, the sooner we can get on to finding even more knowledge. The universe is a pretty big place, and we're not nearly done discovering everything that there is to know. So why hang on and protect to the little bit that we do know?
Perfect. Thanks for that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my responsibility to bring a discussion that I think could and should continue for much longer to a close, for today at least. And I think we need to question our behavior as disruptors or innovators or disruptees, and ask questions like, does the disruption improve the quality of life and life experiences? Is it maybe exploitative? Think about it. Which opportunities have been lost? How should activities be adapted to recognize and benefit from the disruption? And questions like this, we need to start to think about this, because in the same way that fire and wheels have destroyed many lives in history, they also brought about major gains in the development of mankind. So we cannot disregard them. We should look at where's the focus. So maybe we should engage in and focus on those human capacities that cannot be easily disrupted, such as equilibrium in our work-life experiences, emotional, physical well-being, and the continued search for an enhanced future for all humanity. If you think about it like this, there's around about 7.9 billion humans on Earth, plus minus a few. For every 100 people, almost 9 of them are going to bed hungry at night. Think about that when you've got your dinner tonight. 8 of them are unemployed. Around 10 adults are illiterate. And really a major problem, 26 of them are affected by what's called fragility or conflict or violence in some way. And I think if we think about life like that, we surely need targeted disruption from our current existence and way of living to ensure that we've got a meaningful life for all of humanity. With that, I would like to thank you for an hour of your time tonight. Our alumni, I really hope that the discussions will continue in your own communities. A very special thank to Prof. Coetzee that joined us tonight in a very busy program, but also to our panelists, to Bridget, to Justin, to Nicol, for joining us this evening. And to the alumni, I would like to say, guys, you've seen their names now, you've seen their web addresses. Please, I think they would welcome the discussion to continue because they are passionate about this. Please watch this space. We've got another LeadUP alumni virtual chat coming up on 12 May 2021, and that's titled Rethinking Privatization Towards Economic Recovery. And I would like to say, borrowing from our Dean, it links to rethink, reposition, reimagine, repurpose. We have to start to think differently. Tonight's event was brought to you by, as we said in the beginning, the University of Pretoria's Alumni Relations team. And our thanks really as a panel also to them for their professional preparation, their handling of the event, and making this possible. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and good night.